The question is basically, how would we change the system to make it to where other players bring some of the boons? The current meta for the game is that you've got one person in a group who's like a healer, and they give alacrity or quickness, and then like every other boon. So 25 might, fury, the alac or the quickness, regeneration, protection, swiftness, vigor, healing, condition cleansing, maybe barrier, CC, a little bit of damage, and maybe they file your taxes if you're a good boy. You know, all of that. Then the second person in the group is DPS, and they provide quickness or alacrity. The other one of the two that was not previously covered. Then you've got 3 people in the group that are pure DPS. So how would we make it to where the healer is not responsible for literally all of that stuff? There's really only one way, because if you just make it optional, people aren't gonna do it, you know? And you can't just be like, oh, Druid is now no longer capable of generating might and fury, because then people are just like, okay, I'm gonna bring a firebrand, I'll never group with the Druid again. You've got to make a sweeping change. Like, so again, if they wanted to do this at all, they would need to do a sweeping change that would affect all the healers. So I am spitballing here, okay? I'm just throwing some ideas out. These are not, these do not have a lot of thought behind them. But like, what if you had a thing where like, if you took the trait that made you able to produce alacrity or quickness, you were then unable to produce another specific boon. Like, to make something up, be like, if you provide quickness, you can no longer generate might. If you did that in some way, shape, or form, it would force the meta to change. Like, you know, it's like, okay, well, people don't want to give up quickness, but now someone else has to take might, and suddenly everything would shift. Like, you know, there's already supports that can provide might, like, you know, offensive ones. They would just have to move some traits around, maybe lower their damage very slightly and stuff like that. It'd be awful for solo. No, it wouldn't, because you could just change the trait. You could choose which one you wanted to bring. However, this is an example. Again, this is not something I'm saying is the way to do it. I'm giving you an example for how could they possibly fix this. If they change the traits to where, like, if you provide A, you cannot provide B, then other people would have to step up. Here's another one. What if the amount of might provided by an individual source was capped? So your healer can give you no more than 10 stacks of might. So your other stacks of might come from other people. So you would have 2 or 3 people in the group all pitching in on the might stack until you had 25 max. That would be another thing that they could code into the game, where each person could only give you a max of, I don't know, 5 or 10 stacks of might, so everybody had to pitch in. That's just another idea off the top of my head. So there is no one thing would fix this. And again, it also depends on, does ArenaNet think it is something that needs to be fixed, right? They might not even think this is a problem. So, you know, the question is, A, is it actually a problem? And then B, if it is a problem, are they going to acknowledge it? And if they're going to acknowledge it, are they going to do something to fix it? Because I'll remind you guys that Underwater Mechanist has not worked. And I would say that that's a bug and like kind of an oversight, because a base engineer has a tool belt. A mechanist gives up the tool belt and gains a mech. But if they go underwater, they don't have a mech or a tool belt. They're weaker than a base engineer. That cannot have been, like, intended. So, but they haven't even ever mentioned it. Like, it is just like a shh, like, don't talk about it thing, and maybe they'll forget. And that's been like that since End of Dragons. So, yeah, in conclusion, I'm not saying that it is a change that needs to be made. I personally think it would be good for the game, but they might never agree with me on that, right? Like, I'm not one of the programmers, I'm not one of the developers. That's just my thoughts as a player, and some people will agree and some people won't. I personally like the idea of divvying up the workload. You know, because it's like, if you're a healer and you don't provide 25 stacks of might, you don't provide quickness, or you don't provide alacrity, or you don't provide fury, or you don't provide the regen, or the prot, or the swiftness, or sometimes the vigor, people, not resistance, no one cares about that, but people will be very upset with you because you're not pulling your weight, even though they're not doing much at all. And that's not even, you know, talking about your other job, which is the healing, the cleansing, the barrier ring, the positioning, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be kind of cool if in a future patch of Guild Wars 2 they did like an overhaul on the boon system. Like with the way it is right now, we just had that beta where, you know, there was the LFG thing for fractals, and you could, you know, just instant queue for fractals here, and it only works for tier 1. If they want this to work for tier 4, they will have to make it work for the current group compositions, which means they've got to somehow make it to where, like, you know, LF quick DPS, 3 normal DPS, 1 alack healer, or quick healer and alack DPS and 3 normal DPS, you know, and they're going to have to make it work. Now, they could have it work on just like the honor system, or they could have it work on where it actually checks your traits. But that would be a total pain, because like they would need to check your traits, check your weapon, check your stats, check your utilities, all that kind of stuff. So they might just do it on like an honor system or something. Like you choose what you queue as, they just assume you're telling the truth and just slam the group together. That would probably be the better option. But yeah, so like it really goes to say, like, are they going to lean in and embrace that? Because we've got a lot of other things in the game, like let me change over to a druid build here for just a second, because I was playing Untamed. Like Lingering Light, I've done videos about this. It feels incredible to play with this trait. Like this feels like the way druid was meant to be played, but you're never allowed to take it because it competes with alacrity. Paragon, coming out soon, had a really cool Grandmaster trait that looked quite awesome for healing, but you're never going to be allowed to take it because there was another trait in that same column that gave alack or quick. I forget which, but one of them. And there's a lot of traits like this. And unless the workload of these boons is divided away from the healers a little bit, they might as well be blank slots. They're almost never going to be used except for like very niche other things in PvE. But yeah, that's it. You know, there was no script for this. That's my long-winded answer to your question, and hopefully it just, you know, opens up some food for thought.